Lots to talk about here. I love how you're feeding me right into my outline. I have an outline over here to just keep me honest in case I get nervous and can't think of anything. But you talked about going to Nashville to be a musician, or going there to be an artist, or going there to be a songwriter. And you were going there ultimately to be a songwriter, but you were an artist in your own right. You had a deal with MCA, released an album, had a couple of singles that charted. A lot of people would say that's a successful artist right there.
Well, everybody knew I was an artist on MCA, but MCA, they had no idea, you know. Uh, but I'll be honest with you, and this is the truth. I mean, that's something you have to really want, and somebody else wanted that for me. I didn't want that, and the whole idea of being thought of like that was just off-putting to me. Uh, and I knew I didn't want to do that. I did not want to be involved in the industry from that standpoint. Uh, and uh, of course, we let everything die off from any of that success before Jamie and I actually moved to Nashville. By the time we got there, you know, Jim Glazer had lost his deal, and all that was over with. So in a way, though, Chris, it was a good thing because I made the decision that if we were gonna move there, and I was gonna throw myself out into the public, I was gonna start over, not say, hey, you know, I used to be on MCA Records, and hey, I charted on Billboard. I never mentioned any of it.
Hmm.
I said, if I'm going to make it as a songwriter, I'm going to make it from the ground up, not thinking that you're owed something because you actually, you know, have been on Billboard before. So much so, this is the truth. The first time I went down to audition for the Sunday Night Writer Show at the Bluebird, I was up on stage, and I nervously sang the half song you have to sing, and then I got called back to the board, and who was doing the audition that day? None other than the owner, Amy Curland,
Wow.
and her dear friend, uh, uh, Janice Ian. So
Okay.
that's who I'm seeing. Yeah. So yeah, I was sweating like I had tuberculosis. I was so nervous. It was dreadful, but I made it through it. And Amy looked at me, and she held up my album,
Wow.
which she had, and she said, "What are you doing here auditioning for this?" And I said, "Amy, I'm starting over." And she very politely and very rightfully just said, "Fair enough. We'll see you, you know, in 3 weeks for the Sunday night show." And that was the last we mentioned of it. But uh, it's one of those things where now when I talk to people, and if anybody wants my advice on something, you know, it's like you either ride all the rides, or, you know,
Hmm.
it's
You,
just not, it's just,
you gotta
it's
take
not
it. You
fair.
gotta take it all as it comes for sure. I want to give your wife some flowers as well because you guys met and got together before Nashville and all of that stuff. So she's been through this ride with you all the entire way essentially. What kind of support did she have for you in this endeavor, and what did that mean to you over the years?
Well, number one, we wouldn't be having this conversation without her.
Yep.
That's the bottom line. I literally came home from band practice. We had a little apartment there in Thunderbolt, Georgia, and we had been married 2 years. And I came home from band practice, and my landlord was sitting on the front stoop. And I said, "Well, that's not a good sign." And he said, "No, I just need to see the apartment before y'all vacate." And I went, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, your wife called and gave 30 days notice and said she's moving to Nashville."
Wow.
And I went, well, the natural question was, did she mention taking me? Uh, but
Of
as it
course.
turns out, she she literally called my hand. She, I think several nights before, she had broached the subject across our little dining room table there. She said, "You know, I've thought about things a lot," and she said, "We can be broke anywhere."
Wow.
And she said, we might as well go be broke in Nashville where maybe somebody might actually hear something. Because I was writing songs furiously when we lived right after we got married. I had finally gotten a handle on just a few elements of songwriting, I thought. And uh, so we moved to town. We came here 30 days later after that conversation with my landlord. We were Nashvillians, and we had no plan or anything. We had enough money saved that we thought we could live for 3 months. And my Jaymi is the brains of the outfit, and she has an MBA. She was immediately able to get a job, so we were able to at least stay around Nashville long enough to hopefully get something going. And so she went to work right away and kept the lights on. And the only thing playing in a band all your life qualifies you to do is either be a child
Yep.
psychologist or lift and tote heavy things. So I got a job working at UPS loading trucks. So I'd get up, get Jaymi off to work, write, and then show up at UPS at I had the 11 to 3 shift, and I'd load trucks, and then I'd get off, come home and shower, and we'd go out to any open mic show that was available. And that was our first 2 or 3 years in Nashville. It was just going out and trying to find some place to stand in front of a microphone and sing a song you had just written.
So
Uh,
what was the plan there? Were you trying to get a publishing deal? Were you trying to be an artist? Like what
that's
was
a great question. I didn't know what I was doing. I remember a real cold evening in February, right after we had moved there, just staring out the window, going, I don't really know how to get started doing anything other than the only thing I'd ever done, which was perform. That's it. I'd played in bands my whole life, so I said, well, maybe the path is to go out and just ply your trade, just sing your songs. Well, uh,
and there was nobody else in
one,
Nashville at the time doing that, right? Like nobody.
no, no, there's a very famous scene in one of my favorite books, Grapes of Wrath, and it's where they're at the camp, and he says, "Oh no, I got a job. I got a card here that says I've got a job waiting on me." And the whole camp holds up the same card. It's like,
Yeah.
no, they ain't got a job. We all do, and we all don't have a job. So I literally, and I remember it to this day. I wandered into the back of Douglas Corner Cafe and for an open mic show, and that's where I met Garth. He was in the same boat I was in. He had just moved there, and he had absolutely nothing going on either. But went up and introduced myself, and that was screaming in on 40 years ago now, and we've been friends ever since. So, been a you know. To say that Jaymi was right, it would be an understatement. It's like, well, uh, because we moved to Nashville because of her, I met Garth and I wrote all these songs that we've talked about. I mean, I don't know that I ever would have if we'd have stayed at home. And without Jaymi, I can honestly say this: I would have never had the courage or the wherewithal to have gotten here.
And
So
as a young songwriter, that validation, even though it's your wife, that validation has to be huge on your craft, right? Like, I mean, I can't
it,
imagine.
it was, and I think she knew that I was serious. I wasn't doing this for any other reason except that's just what I do. I mean, I write songs. I mean, I didn't. I wasn't ever going to set the world on fire doing anything else. I can assure you that. But I know for a fact and I've said it a thousand times. I'll say it 1,001. Whether we were having this conversation or not, or whether uh, anybody knew any of the other songs that I've written, I'd still have the same number of songs. I, if that's what you do, that's what you do. I mean, because goodness knows if you're only going to judge your career based on how many you've had recorded as opposed to how many you've written, nobody's got a very good batting average.
It's funny you mentioned
So
batting average because I was just going to say, you know, a good hitter in the major leagues is a failure 7 out of 10 times.
yeah, that's right. That's right. And I mean this when I go out and play to this day. I mean, I just, you know, there's a couple of I'll play a couple of songs that maybe somebody knows, but there's a bunch of them that I play that just because they're my favorites or they mean so much to me. I know what, you know, and it's like that's the whole reason I wrote them in the first place.
Hmm.
I didn't consider them a failure if they weren't recorded. I think too often a lot of people approach writing here these days as it's only a valid song if it is recorded. Otherwise, you know, and I've never looked at it that way. That's why I very rarely co-write because I'm in no hurry to finish something just for the sake of filling up the page and turning something in. You know,